Hello everyone, and welcome to UXPin Talks. It's a series of interviews with professionals from the field of UX from all walks of life. They share their thoughts on what UX means to them, teach us, and inspire us. So tune in. Welcome to another episode of UXPin Talks. Today I'm hosting Bree Walter and Jason Lopez from H&R Block. H&R Block is one of the world's leading companies in online tax filing. We will find out how they contribute to the research, strategy, and design processes. So 3, 2, 1. Hi, Jason. Hi, Bree. Thanks for joining us on the podcast. To start off, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yes, I'm Jason Lopez. I'm a user experience designer here at H&R Block, and currently we work in the space of retail tax products. And previously, before, I worked in healthcare technology as well as education. So I come from a couple of experienced backgrounds in the space of being a lead facilitator and also working as a instructional designer by trade. Later on, found an academy program and went through and actually understood the certifications for user experience design and able to move forward in here now at H&R Block.
And I'm Bree Walter, and like Jason, I also came from a healthcare IT background. I was designing electronic medical records in my previous role, and about a year ago, I came over to H&R Block. But outside of work, I think it's also serendipitous to say that Jason and I, outside of our 9 to 5, also do a lot of nonprofit work, and that's where we actually worked together on our first project, was on this nonprofit hackathon project. And that's whenever I decided, Jason, I need you on my team. Get over here now. And so that's whenever Jason came on board in April, and we've been working together on all of our tax prep applications ever since.
Awesome. And so what are your current roles at H&R Block right now?
Sure. So I think to explain our current roles, you kind of have to understand the lay of the land here at H&R Block. So H&R Block has 2 service lines that you may be familiar with. There is this DIY or do-it-yourself, which you can log on to hrblock.com, file your taxes yourself. However, if you wanted to go into a tax prep office, like one of our H&R Block offices, and have a tax professional help you out and file your taxes, maybe you have a more complex situation, we have that service too. So we have had a UX team at H&R Block that has been consumer focused. So they've been focused on our DIY solution for a few years now. However, Jason and I are the first ones to come into H&R Block and kind of look at that other side of the spectrum, which is our tax prep applications in our offices. And those are the applications that our tax professionals use. And historically, they've never had UX representation. So Jason and I are the first ones to really solely be focused on that tax pro experience, because our company realized how big of a gap that was. The fact that these tax pros, were having a compromised UX that wasn't really getting updated very often. It didn't have, UX representation or advocacy. And the fact that then they had to use these solutions and then try to provide a quality service to our consumers, sometimes it would get impacted by that. And so, over the course of this last year that I've been here and since Jason has been here, we've been focused on, we're embedded in our engineering department, which is also a unique aspect, whereas our UX counterparts on the other side, the consumer side, are grounded in our marketing department. And so that's kind of our role here at Block, is that we're the first ones to really step in as advocates for our tax professional experience.
Yeah, so since you were the first on the UX design team, what kind of design process did you set up? What does it look like right now?
Yeah, Julia, I think we have a unique experience here as UX designers. We do more of the full stack UX services here. So really we look at the strategy portion as well as looking at the research. So we really want to start off pre-project and really kind of meet with our product owners and product team and begin to look at that. And then from there, we actually go into the design and look at the measurement. So across the board, we're actually doing everything from user feedback to team collaboration with developers. So it runs a gamut for everything that we're doing here at H&R Block.
Awesome. And what about user testing? Do you also do that at H&R Block?
Yeah, so for user testing, we also have a UX lab here. And it actually, what's really nice about this is it's pretty unique in the sense that it's actually a retail space designed for our users to come in and actually have a full retail experience with tax pros, and also looking at how we can test our products in that lab, understanding those needs that they have currently, and then also how are we looking to solve those problems in the future.
And what's neat about that UX lab that I'll add is that it not only is it a replica of our retail offices, so we get a very accurate test, but also it
Mhm.
has two different like two-way mirrors. And so we can pull in our development teams, our product teams, some of our different partner teams, and actually have them observe the test as it's going on real time. And I think that's so important whenever you're doing user testing, is that you have, it's not just the UX team running the test, that it's a full team, a team effort. And if they can see it firsthand, it just creates so much more impact. So I love that our UX lab has that particular feature.
Awesome. Awesome. And what does the test look like step by step? Could you also describe that?
Sure. So I think it just kind of depends on what our problem is that we're solving. So sometimes we'll run unmoderated remote tests where maybe we'll send out a link through, usertesting.com or a similar tool to some of our users, and we'll let them complete it in their own setting on their own time, without any prompts. But whenever we bring in people on site into our offices, it's usually whenever we're really like redesigning from the ground up a problem or a product, something that has kind of been in our field for years and historically hasn't had much change. So this is drastic. And so we like to fully see whenever we bring people on site. We do, we'll do like video recording so we can see features, their facial features, and some of the responses that way. And what we'll do is we'll step them through usually like a very task-based test. We'll also do a little preliminary, like getting to know you before all of our tasks. And so we'll get to know the background of how long have you been with a company? What's your role? What are some of the different roles that you've had in our company? What are your biggest pain points? What are, your biggest, why do you work for Block? What do you enjoy the most about working for Block? So getting to know that individual a little better will help us analyze their tasks a little better as well. And then at the end, we'll do the typical the standard kind of ratings and like Likert scales, like the SUS, and we'll allow them to ask follow-up questions and things like that. And then what we like to do is also create this ongoing feedback loop with those testers. So we like to create this network and this communication that if we need to follow up with them, we can, or they can feel free to, come back to us if they have thoughts after our test or after the fact and be able to share more with us.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of problems and pain points, what kind of problems do your products solve for the users?
Yeah, so something that's really unique about our particular team, because as I mentioned, we have the two teams, one that focuses on consumers and now Jason and I that focus on our tax professional experience. Well, there's a very unique challenge with the tax pros whenever it comes to research and testing, and that's something that we have to think about. And so particular problems that we are solving whenever we're thinking of our tax pros versus our clients is that we're trying to basically represent an area of our user set that hasn't been represented before. And so for example, like if you look at some of the user research on tax professionals, the demographics are greatly different than what our consumer demographics would be, right? So we have tax professionals, 50% of them, I think the last time I looked at the demographic statistic was that over 50% of them are over the age of 50. And so because of that, they're gonna have very unique needs that our consumers wouldn't. And so those have been some interesting, kind of, I would say, unique problems that we have to solve with just having a new user set that we're focusing on. Also, along those same lines, these tax professionals have just historically had disparate systems. So they've had to open up, a different application. I think they run something like, 5+ applications in the office at any given point. And so they had to open them up all separately. They didn't really integrate well or speak with each other well. And so what we're trying to do and what we're trying to solve now is how can we better integrate these systems, knowing that our tax professionals are really honestly using them all pretty much concurrently in their day-to-day roles. And how can we create more of a suite and more of this, a holistic view at their problems and their tasks in their day-to-day lives. So I think their pain point at the end of the day is just they have unique needs as a tax professional, whether that be because of their demographics, because of the tasks that they're solving and their day. And so those have been some interesting challenges for us to understand how can we make your work more efficient, more streamlined, and then also just maintain the integrity of what we're trying to provide in our offices, which is a really personal, a really expertise kind of experience to our clients. And that's the reason that our clients come to our offices and don't do their taxes at home, is because they want a personal touch. They want somebody who knows what they're doing maybe more than they would at home. And so it's maintaining that integrity, that as we update our systems, we're not bogging down our tax professionals or inconveniencing them, that we're giving them the tools that they can leverage to empower them to provide better services to our clients.
And do you think that personal touch also helps you gain trust?
Yeah, I think absolutely. And Jason, if you want to speak on like the trust part a little bit, but I do think that that's one small part of it, is that, providing the tools that empower them to provide a better service to their clients. But Jason, do you want to speak to just some of that trust aspect as well?
No, the trust is that, when we actually design these softwares for our tax professionals, then they have the opportunity to actually, create that better experience for the clients. And not only that, but as Bree mentioned, with the way their day-to-day work is today, that they have a lot of needs currently. And so we want to be sure that we're looking at how do we not only provide the experience for the tax professionals, but what does that extension look like for our clients that are actually coming into our retail offices? So, when we're looking at that, in designing these products in a way that can help us to ensure that, the trust that we're building here at H&R Block is to say that, we're hearing your needs and we're looking to solve those problems for not only today, but for the future.
And then if I can add on that trust piece too, I think something that Jason and myself have been really intentional about doing since we've came in with the company, because historically, right, these tax professionals haven't really understood what UX is, because they've never had somebody speaking to them in UX lingo, or coming to them and saying, like, let's run through this user test and let's talk about your feedback. And, of course, I don't want to discredit the other team members who have, historically been doing that, whether it be our product owners or developers or executive leadership. I mean, everybody always wants what's best for our tax professionals in the field, but nobody came in and really was using UX methods. And so I think what's been important for Jason and myself to do is that we have been interfacing with our tax professionals like nobody's business. We've been in the offices, getting to know them, sending out surveys, doing, focus groups or user groups. And I think that's really important, because that also establishes trust, right? It kind of creates this feeling of there's somebody here for you, a central person.
Right.
And we try to create this extended network on that same point, is that it's not only you getting to know us and why we're here for you, but now let's create a dialogue. Let's create this ongoing conversation and feedback loop, and feel that you can come to us anytime that you have a problem, anytime you have a pain point or even an idea. And so just for example, like we have an H&R Block convention coming up next month, actually, where like 5,000 to 10,000 of our users are going to be collected in one area. So we're looking at introducing a lot of UX opportunities there, whether it be through research, through testing, just conversations. And one of the things that we're going to do is kind of introduce this stay in touch with us aspect. And so trying to build up more, kind of more conversation, more dialogue, more presence in the field for people to be able to feel like they can trust us to share their pain points with us, and that we create this safe space, and that we, really put them at the forefront of what we do.
Awesome. The convention part sounds like a really challenging part of it. So in terms of challenges, are there any that you're currently facing in terms of building that experience for your users?
Yeah, so here at H&R Block, we actually have a great insights and analytical team that's doing a lot of the user research, but I would kind of extend out to the user testing with our particular user sets that we have for our tax pros. And then we want to be sure that we can actually gain the information from these tax pros to kind of better, solve our problems that we're doing with our tax products. So right now, today, it's looking at that user testing and how do we kind of extend to that network. And to Bree's point, with the convention coming up, it creates a great opportunity to really kind of create a visible presence for the UX team here at H&R Block, and really kind of extends that network to allow them to have their voices be present and allow their voices to be brought back to H&R Block, so that we can begin to solve those problems for them.
Yeah, and if I can add on to that, I think, kind of extending on that user testing piece and research, is that we all understand that research and testing is so important, but I think one convenience that you just don't think about sometimes whenever you're in a consumer world versus, like, in this case, I would kind of consider us more of a B2B in a way, where with consumers, you can kind of throw out user tests on usertesting.com and anybody can be a potential user, right? Because anybody could be our client. There's not really a lot of specific limitations that we're looking for here. And so we can source research or testing anywhere in our consumer world. Whereas with our tax professionals, for us to user test something, you have to be a tax or professional. You have to have the understanding of the tax knowledge. You have to be a certain demographic, things like that. And so sometimes it's just, we have a few more, I would say, hoops to jump through to make sure that we are reaching the right kind of sample for our tests and our research. So I think that's kind of, Jason, what you're speaking about is, like, convention, for example, is a great opportunity. But a lot of times that's what we run into, is that it's harder for us to disperse user tests to the right kind of audience and get the right kind of feedback, just because our user set is a little harder to access than just the consumer world.
Right.
And I think, we see that as a limitation, but I think that, we're kind of thinking of new ways to strategize how we can user test and create an extended network to our tax professionals.
Okay. Well, with so many products at H&R Block, when you're redesigning them, how do you manage to press the boundaries of the way it's always been done? So how do you introduce new ways in the product design?
Yeah, this is a great question. I think Jason always speaks to this point about whenever he was interviewing with H&R Block, I think my manager said a quote, like, the history of Block has been known as a financial company, and we're at this cusp where H&R Block is stepping up as a technology company and embracing what that means. And so I think by the nature of Jason and I coming on board and the company seeing the need that we need to focus on the tax professional and not just the consumer, I think that in itself speaks mountains for how we're trying to press the way it's always been done. But specifically in our day-to-day roles, we do a lot around workshops. So I think workshops are really huge to draw a large group of people together across all different disciplines and make it an inclusive environment and a safe space. And so we've been embracing and leaning into those extensively over the last handful of months here as we start looking at the future of our products. But it allows everybody to have a hand in the outcome, and it creates, like I said, the safe space where everybody can suggest ideas and feel empowered to really think through what could our future look like. And I love a quote that one of our developers shared during one of our workshop sessions. They said, "This method is radically different than we've ever done it before." And I think that's awesome here, is that like our teams trust us that we can come and suggest these different methods, maybe workshops, which people at first maybe weren't excited about, but that they support us, and that once you're in one of these workshops and once you're really in there and you see the outcome and you see how much time it saves you and the amazing new ideas that we came up with and what the future could look like for our users, everybody gets really excited. And so I think that is definitely a big thing that we have been embracing to press those boundaries. But it's not just those workshops. I think it's also just kind of greatly evolving how our team dynamics and our processes and operations look. So, for example, Jason and myself being the first ones to be embedded in our engineering team as opposed to our marketing team on the other side of the house, this has greatly changed up how much we're interfacing with our developers and being in our agile team settings. So we are constantly communicating with them and kind of have point that as we're doing design and development, that we're very much acting as like a collaborative team. And so I think that has played a really big part in how we're changing up how it's always been done, because before it was sort of product and UX would work together to come up with ideas, and then you would have this sort of handoff or really throw it over the fence to developers and then hope for the best. But that's obviously not effective, and that doesn't ensure that you're getting to the right outcome. So having this really embedded UX in agile development setting, I think has just given us so much more flexibility and freedom and ultimately efficiency. And then I think the last thing that I would say that's pressed those boundaries is that we've traditionally worked in a tax season timeline. So if you're familiar with the tax season, it's January through April. And so because of that, our development teams and our whole company was sort of working in this now April to kind of November when we went into a code freeze was that was our timeline. And so it created a lot of limitations in how quickly we had to work. And we were also sort of only ever grasping at like, what does next year look like? What does next year look like? And there wasn't a lot of discussion around what does the next 3 to 5 years look like? And so we've really been embracing this longer term strategic vision across the company. And I think that's given us a lot of great opportunities to just think about not putting a couple quick band-aids on something to get it out the door for the next tax season, but really think about like what could the future of our products and our customer experience and service look like.
Awesome. It sounds like you're doing a great job propagating that knowledge about UX across such a large company. And if we're talking about a large organization, do you use any design systems for so many products?
Yeah, so since coming on board to H&R Block, previously, there's been a lot of design tools, but, Bree and I have embraced UXPin as kind of being that tool for design. And with that, we actually use UXPin for our style guides. And so, to maintain consistency across all our products, the style guides and UXPin has been really helpful to kind of have that communication between design and development. So before, it might have been, just a single file handoff and making sure that developers are in process with how the designs were designed. But in this case, now with the style guide, we've now introduced them to, having a multitude of people being able to see the style guide. They can share that, create the components inside of the development, and begin to move the product forward. And so we're able to maintain and support those standards across the development and ongoing communication loops within development. And then I would also say that, we've also created, in order for there to be consistency, we've also created a more development to user experience weekly sessions where we actually begin to align a little bit more closely in the development process, making sure that, based on the product speaking more for the users in each sprint that comes up, and being able to look at how we can strategize a little bit more closely to where the design has been communicated into product.
Awesome. So what are the most satisfying aspects of your job in general, if you were to name, for example, 3 of them?
Yeah, so I don't know if I have 3, but I just thought of this on the spot. I was bragging to Jason. I was like, I just think that I thought of the ultimate way to explain what satisfies me about UX design is that I think everybody always says that UX a lot of times has to wear many hats, and take that as you will. But I think for me, I actually love those many hats. And to me, those many hats are that whenever you're doing user research, it's almost as if you get to be this ultimate listener. You get to be a counselor, kind of this therapist, and really take in what people are saying. And then as you start analyzing problems, you become this detective, and you're investigating and trying to figure out where like the problems are. And then as you start ideating on solutions and creating something, you're like this artist, and you're embracing all these cool design aesthetics and colors and typography, and getting into like this art that's super exciting. And then ultimately, once you release it out, to your users, and you see them use it, and you see the positive impact that it has on them, and whenever you do user testing and you're like, that is the way that I wanted you to do this, then you're kind of like this cheerleader, and you're cheering them on, and you're like, I'm so happy that we found something that worked for you, and you get to do something better, and you get to provide, in our case, like with our tax pros, I'm cheering them on as they provide a better service to our clients. And so I think for me, it's like those hats are so awesome, because in a day-to-day, it not only provides something different and something new, and it provides kind of excitement, but also just at the end of the day, like those hats are something that I take very seriously and that I love every piece of.
Yeah, and for me, I kind of speak to a little bit more starting out with, the problems that need to be solved, and really kind of going into that listening aspect, because it's not how do you take the problem and just be able to design a solution for that, but you're actually looking at the users and really being able to focus on what are their goals, what are their impacts, how am I able to understand their journey from point A to point B, and being able to come up with creative ways to solve that through design. And it's not really about getting into the wireframing and diving into the tools right away, but it's really being able to go more from that analytical approach, and being able to go for more that research strategy approach. And then from there, being able to discover and define a little bit more about what problems you're trying to solve. So for me, it's looking at the entire process and being able to kind of provide those solutions, but based on the user's needs and experiences along the way.
Right, and help with the problem at the end of the day. So we're going to be wrapping up. The last question that I always like to ask is, what would be your definition of user experience?
Yeah, so I love this question because you never know the answer you're going to get, right? So I would like to point to two people that really inspire me. So Steve Krug, I just saw at a UX conference a couple months ago, and he thought about, or he mentioned this aspect of user experience, that whenever usability shifted into user experience, that's whenever we started to factor in all these things like satisfaction and success and conversions that kind of come with that experience portion of usability. But if you really boil it down to what it all is, I go to this Mike Montero quote, he is a great design ethics speaker, and he speaks about, before being designers, truly we're humans. So before we have to think about, before we should think about ROI and about, the business values, is that ultimately we're humans. And so for me, the definition of UX is how something relates to a human, whether that's, a digital interface that you're designing, a physical product, a retail store. Like truly at the end of the day, it's the interactions that somebody is having with this thing, and then the feelings that they have about it. And that's it. I mean, if you're thinking about design and you're thinking about experience, and the user side of that is it's human. And so for me, I would like to just boil it back down to that, because I think we always try to tack on more to UX and what it means and what the impacts are and this and that and the ROIs and the conversions. But I just try to strip it down and say, at the end of the day, it's human centered.
No,
That's perfect.
I totally agree with that. When we look at this process and kind of the process of designing products, putting humans first at the center of, at the experience and understanding, what needs do they have? How do they feel? And being able to kind of approach a problem with being able to say, okay, these are real people using our day-to-day problems. They have needs that need to be solved. And if we can just look a little bit deeper, not by what is just the business need, but what do the core of our users need, then from there, we're going to be a little bit more successful with the products and the problems that we're solving. But, for me, it does go back to, it is a human centered, a human at the core of design. So.
Okay. And that sounds perfect, what you just said. I think that all of us should have such approach towards UX. All right, guys. Thank you. You were awesome.
Julia, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. And we so enjoy that UXPin is doing this podcast to just continue your community embracing knowledge sharing. We love it.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Julia.
If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to follow us and tune in for the next episode of UXPin Talks. I'm Julia Hallenuk, and I was your host.